Alright, so in this tutorial we're just going to go through like one of the ways that you can do like a lightsaber battle using After Effects. I'm going to real quickly show you how to do like one lightsaber. Then I'll leave it recording and I'll speed it up and I'll finish it and then come back and then go through kind of the final touches. So first thing you need to do, obviously boot up After Effects. A couple of ways you can import your stuff from After Effects. You can just click and drag it from your file browser. If you don't want to do that, you can go File, Import, and then choose it from there. I'm just going to click and drag mine in. Okay. So this is the footage that I'll be working with. Okay, so if we double click on it, we can just play through it and preview it. Now to start, there's a little bit of kind of waiting at the start of the shot, so I'm just going to cut it out just real quick. So if you scrub along to kind of where you want your footage to start, you've got kind of your in point set here, so you can just click there. I'll put in your in point, and then you can do the same then obviously for an out point as well. But the out point, that's fine. I'll just do it maybe just with a clash. What that does is kind of just it temporarily puts those markers, and then when you drop it on the timeline, it'll remember those. So if I was to click and drag this onto the timeline now, just let go, it's actually just done that for me. Okay. It doesn't actually trim the footage, it's not destructive, it just kind of hides it. So if I was to click and drag here, you can see my composition's actually still sitting there, and I can still adjust it. But it's just a handy way you can kind of trim your footage before you start working on it. Just a couple of things I noticed just from teaching people After Effects. A couple of like common mistakes that people make is they constantly click up here and then wonder why they can't see anything. It's just worth you guys like just always double check what you're previewing. Okay, so it'll always tell you what it is as well. So, example, I'm on just a piece of footage here. If I had sound, I could double click. It would just be the audio. My composition's still open. It's still just sitting there, and it's like it is one of the silliest, like most common mistakes that I notice students make. But just in case you're worried that you've lost your stuff, just always double check there. Also, you can close out of this as well, and then you get worried because you think that everything's gone. It's like I've done in other tutorials. It's the same as every piece of Adobe software. You go to Window Workspace, and then you can reset whatever workspace you're in. So we're in the standard workspace at the minute. If I hit reset, knock everything back to normal. Okay. So I've just made a quick composition just using the existing settings of that. I just click drag down here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start just kind of rotoscoping our way through this piece bit by bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new layer. It's going to be like a solid layer. So layer, new, we get option then for solid. So by default this is probably set to the size of your composition. Okay, so my video footage is 1280 by 720. You can obviously, for different tutorials later on, you might be using like a different size, but this is fine. I'm going to set the color just to be white. Okay, so whenever you're happy with that, just hit OK. That's it done. So what we're going to do here is this is where people seem to get like a little bit confused, and this is just for me doing this in lessons that I notice is happening. We're gonna hide this layer first of all, just using the eye icon down here, and now we're going to work on it. So the layer's still there, we're still clicked on it, clicked on this white layer, but now we're going to do a little bit of work on it. So just to make this a little bit easier, I'm just going to zoom in. So just to move around, by the way, I'm just using the middle click on my mouse, and then I can zoom just using the roller. So just going to zoom in just so we can see this lightsaber. From here we're going to go up and grab the pen tool. Okay, shortcut for it is G on the keyboard, which is obviously a bit weird. In Photoshop it's normally P. So click on this pen tool, and what we're going to do is we're going to click, I'm going to make like 4 points here for our kind of lightsaber. Alright, so we'll go 1 point there, 1 point here, 1 point here, point there. And you know, notice if we hover back over it, it's the same kind of symbol that you'd see in Photoshop or Illustrator. That'll join the path back together, and that's it done. So what that's actually done there is it's actually made a mask. Masks are really cool for kind of hiding stuff or making stuff visible. So underneath your layer now, when you go in, you'll notice now there's a new little tab that wasn't actually there before. You know, if I go underneath the video layer, that's not there. And that's just that little mask setting. Okay, so if I was to turn on the visibility of my layer, you can see now what's happened is it's defaulted it to add. Okay, so that's the type of mask it is. I could change that if I wanted to subtract, and then wherever I painted that mask is being subtracted from the layer. Okay, so that's why we turn off the white layer. It's just to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Okay, so in here you want to make sure that's set to add, and what we're going to do now is we're actually going to start like animating it, just kind of frame by frame. So what we're actually going to be animating is a thing called the mask path. Okay, so anytime you're animating in After Effects, the stopwatch is what starts your animation. So really important, you come in here, just hit the stopwatch. Straight away what it does is down here, puts in a keyframe. So it's just remembering the location of that mask on that frame. And then now what we want to do is we want to just go through to the next frame, and we want to make any adjustments. So the way that we make adjustments is if you click and drag, you'll notice it moves the whole mask. Is not what we want to do. We want to move kind of individual points. So if you shift and then click once, you'll be able to adjust these points on their own. Okay. And then we go to the next frame, and then we do the same thing. Okay, some frames as well, you might find that you don't really have to make too many adjustments. Maybe you only need to move 1 point. Maybe it actually stays still for a frame. So all you want to do is just go in, and it's kind of, I have a habit of doing this like for all the tiny movements, but then it gets a little bit jittery. So what you guys might want to do is just do big movements. Don't worry about doing all these little tiny ones. So that there one I could maybe get away with just moving this part of it, because it is rotating around where his wrist is. Same with that one, maybe we'll just move the bottom points, not worry about the top points. And you notice every time I move the frame, and then as soon as I make a change, it puts in another one of these little keyframes down here. Okay, so we're doing the same thing, and we're just going through. This is where it gets kind of a little bit time consuming, but you'll find like once you get a bit of speed behind you, you'll actually find it goes quite quick. I'm just going to do this first section, and then I'll leave the video recording, and I'll finish the rest, but I'll just do like a little bit of time lapse on it. I should say if you move the frame and nothing changes, but you want to keyframe it, if you hover over here to the left hand side, you can add or remove a keyframe just using the current settings. Okay, that's kind of later on in animation that becomes like a little bit more important, but for this here it mightn't really apply. As well, just saying, like, if you ever click off your mask by mistake and you go back, just remember to shift click on one of the points if it's not letting you move the individual points. Okay, so I'm going to move on to here. And then once he starts doing big movements, you'll find you're animating kind of less. It's just these little fiddly bits at the start. Okay, so that's kind of the first little section done. If I turn on the eye beside my layer, you can kind of see what's happening now. Okay, and that's kind of what we want to be going for. So what I'm going to do now is I'll continue doing this, and obviously I'll come back later on and explain the next bit to do. Right, so that's the main kind of tracking done of it. Is a little bit wonky in a couple of places, but if I turn on the visibility of that layer, we can kind of watch through it now. If you're kind of wondering why during the video I might appear to kind of scrub through the frames quite quick, the way I'm doing that is if I push Control and the right arrow, it'll just flick me forward 1 frame. Control and the left arrow obviously flick me back 1 frame. So on a couple of these frames, you'll notice there's quite a lot of motion blur. So the best thing for you guys to do is just follow it. If I go on the path here, you can see just follow the motion blur, and it's safer to be outside the pixels than it is to be inside them. So for this frame, you see I've just kind of gone really roughly around it, and that's what creates the illusion, kind of the lightsaber. So that's the first part done. So what we're going to do now is we can turn on the visibility of this layer. It's fine. We're going to duplicate this layer quite a few times, and the way you do that is you push Control and D. So first of all, to begin with, I'm going to go into just the mask settings for this one, and I'm going to set the feather to be 20, okay, which is going to give this this really kind of soft edged it. Okay, you could even go higher than that if you want, but 20 seems not too bad. So from there, I'm going to duplicate this layer. So I'm just going to push Control and D on the keyboard, and then I'm going to go into this layer, into the mask, and I'm going to set this one to be 15. So that's our bottom layer's got really kind of soft feather. Our next one's got less of a feather. Our next layer is obviously going to have less feather. So same again, Control D. I'm going to go inside this one, into the mask. I'm going to set that to be 10. So this one's obviously a lot more solid. And then I'm just going to continue this twice more. Okay, so that one's going to be 5. Actually, once more will be fine. So then what we've got is a load of these layers, and because I did the animation on the first layer, it means now it's just every time I duplicate that layer, brought all the animation with it as well. Okay. So what we're going to do now is going to make another solid layer. So same option we used before. We're going to go Layer, New, Solid. This time we're going to make it black. Okay, that's fine. I just want to give it a name if you want. Black's fine. We're going to go OK that. Okay. Now I've made that just right at the back of that layer. If you haven't done that, you can just click and drag it. So if yours appears on top, you want to drag it to the bottom. So what we should have now is black layer, and then we should have 4 or 5 lightsaber layers sitting on top of it. So what we're going to do now is a thing called pre-comping. I use pre-comping like quite a lot in After Effects. It's a nice way of getting your animations just in their own little kind of shell, in their own little container, and then you can do like massive transactions just that. So what we're going to do is hold down Shift. We're going to select all these. You can select them one at a time if you want. If you hold Control, you can just select the next one. But basically we want the black layer, all the lightsaber layers just in one big selection. We right click on there. We're going to choose a thing called pre-compose. Okay, so what a pre-comp does is it takes all those layers, all their animation, and it puts it now in its own composition, so in its own little timeline. So we're going to call it Light 1. Okay, you can see it's asking me, do I want to move all attributes to the new composition? That's fine. Hit OK. So it doesn't look like much has changed, but what's happened here is instead of having all those layers sitting in your timeline, you've got that pre-composition. If you wanted to change anything, you can double click and then still get to those. So this is quite cool. Like you could animate a character walking, and you could pre-comp that, and then you could animate that pre-comp moving across the screen, so it saves you a lot of work. So that's fine. That's what we wanted to do. From here, we want to just apply an adjustment to this, like an effect. And what we're looking for is a color balance. Okay. So if we just search, you can search over here if you want. If not, you can go to effect, and if you know what category it's in color correction, then you can go to color balance. So there's two ways in that. The way it works from here, over in your effects preset panel, you just click and drag it onto your layer. Okay. Once you have that applied, you'll notice it'll normally pop you into an effects control for whatever layer you're on. If it doesn't, you can get into it using the same way that we got in the mask before. Okay, so anything that you apply to a layer or composition will sit underneath that layer. So what we want to do here is we want to change the color of this. So we want to adjust the mid-tone of the blue and like the highlight of the blue, and maybe some of the shadow as well. Yeah. So what that's done now is it's just given that this only works if you have the black layer on, and because we've applied the composition, it lets us see the difference in the white and the black. And then our last thing to do now is we want to, so that there's kind of what we've got. So what we want to do now is get rid of this black. We want to make that visible. So After Effects, obviously, it works a lot like Photoshop. It's got blending modes and stuff in it. So you can tell your compositions to blend different ways. And the way you do that is if you just right click on a layer or a composition, whatever you're working on. You've got an option for blending modes, and then you can obviously change it. So if you know kind of what way different layers interact, this is quite handy. So a screen will get rid of the black pixels, it'll drop them out, and I'll let you see all the other pixels. Okay, so all I did there was just right clicked, go to blending mode, and then went to screen. Okay, a lighten will do a similar effect as well. It gives you a little bit of a harsher edge. So yeah, if you have any questions, chuck them in the comments. But yeah, thanks to Andrew and Daniel for looking like fools on the video, because it makes it easier for me to use if I footage them. But yeah, there's quite a few kind of techniques in there worth learning, like pre-comp and stuff, using masks, using solid layers, like keyframing. All that stuff's kind of quite important for visual effects, so hope you learned something. And obviously like, subscribe, and all that jazz.